how way, ay, 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 ay. How way up, how way up, ay, 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 ay. How way, ay, 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 how way, ay, 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 ay.
Hi everyone, welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Kira Young, and you've reached me on Revolution Radio, and of course we are also on Real Liberty Media, so check us out at either station or both. Have a party. We have got a really good guest tonight, but before I pull him in, I just want to encourage you to check out our sponsor, Done Right Buffalo Wing Sauce. This stuff is so good. I'm so addicted to it now that I put it on everything. I made wings with this stuff and the whole family just begged for more. They just loved it. So I've since been putting it on everything, including my cod, my wild caught Atlantic cod. I just spread it on there like butter, and it was delicious. I made my meatballs with it, made everything with it. So this stuff, it's good. So anyway, my guest tonight is a writer. He's a musician. He does really, really cool presentations about the stuff that he's into. Let me see if I can pull him in. His name is Marty Leeds, and he's pretty cool. I really dig what he's got going on. Hello, Marty, you there?
Hello, I am.
Hi, welcome to The Bridge.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was really excited to watch your presentation that you did in Toronto. You were speaking my language.
Thank you.
I got everything that you were on about. I initially in my life was very intimidated by math, but you're not talking about the kind of math that I was intimidated by. When I was in college, I went to community college, and then I got recruited to this private school, and they put me in this class called Art, Math, and Nature. And that's where I first started learning about some of the subjects that you were touching on in that presentation and that you do in your videos. So it's not really the kind of math that puts you to sleep. It's the kind of math that excites you, because it's really theology.
Yeah, all the math that I had been taught, I mean, that I had, learned in the educational curriculum that we all went through was obviously very, droll and dry, and, there was just no excitement there. And then when I went and learned math on my own and started understanding all the different ways you could learn that what math had to offer as far as like numerological, the quantities and qualities of mathematics, it's a very lively and rich study, something that I'll study the rest of my life,
And keep learning.
The learning process never stops, so that goes with everything, but especially with mathematics, because, the study of math is infinite, but I do think that there's a base of mathematics that is very easy to understand, and that's essentially the decimal system given to us by our hands, of course, and that those 10 numbers or 10 principles can really tell us a lot about the world in which we experience.
I like how you put together, one of the things that people tend to ask is, what is so sacred about this geometry? Why is it sacred? Why isn't it just geometry? And, my response is, this is how all life unfolds. This is miraculous that we can discover how we're connected. We are where heaven and earth meets. And to be able to, that makes sense to me as somebody who's oriented towards sound. And so when I hear music, that's why I was really excited to hear your music as well. It makes a lot of sense that you'd be a musician. But you hear that perfection, or you feel that perfection in music as well.
Yeah, music is it like shows the higher order of things. Especially when we talk about mathematics and vibration and structure and order with geometry and things like that, that's the one thing that I came to understand, that mathematics was a language of creation and is a language of creation. And that can be substantiated by the fact that every single culture can grasp this language and understand mathematics. And this is the tool that allows us to not only measure measure our world, but track time in and of itself. So mankind is put in this very, very unique position to be able to understand this language of creation, so much so that we can calculate, trillions of digits of pi. It really is the one thing that gives, one of the things I should say that gives mankind this sort of one up on the rest of creation, because, we can calculate, we can extract and deduce, from nature itself, these complex mathematical constants and things like that. A bird, however beautiful it is in its flight and how it creates its nest and things like that is an amazing feat of nature, but that bird cannot calculate the Fibonacci sequence as far as we know. That bird cannot calculate 20 digits of pi. And that's really the one thing that shows man's sort of superior intelligence over the rest of creation, if you will.
Well, yeah, we're in a unique position to figure out at some point that, like you say, we are the universe looking at ourselves, discovering ourselves through ourselves.
Yes, and I think that the mathematics is the language of creation, and that's the one language that allows us to really understand that. I think to really for me, undergoing this study, everything that I had eventually looked into was like theologically based, and so when I went into numbers, I realized that there was a way to prove. This might sound a little flighty or new agey or whatever, but there was a way to prove through mathematics your own divinity and your own sacredness, and that there was, without question or controversy, there is and was an intelligent force in creation, and that mankind could come to understand that force and how it actually interweaves itself or works and helps create creation. We can understand that with things like proportions, things like the Fibonacci sequence and the golden spiral. We can understand it with, obviously like pi and e and fractal mathematics. Simple geometry can teach us this. And I think this is one of the reasons that this sort of mathematics is shunned and not even taught in school, your regular educational curriculum. And then even further, this sort of mathematics is not really taught in the university settings either, because I think that once people actually start to grasp these things, they can see intelligence in creation. They can see that this is not some just random haphazard mess that was just thrown together by some conscienceless nothing that shit the thing out. No, this is crafted, this is organized, this is ordered, this is intelligent. So
I was taught in college about all of these things, but I went to a very small liberal arts college, and I was a philosophy major, and so it was designed for people like me, who really think in those terms of philosophical or theological sort of terms, but might not be really good at the boring type of math. It was a way to get more artistic people into math. But I'm like, how could this not work for everybody? And when I look at your presentations, I'd really like to, if somebody hasn't already done it, sort of convert them for children, because I'm thinking of how I'm going to present this stuff to my 11-year-old. And so as I'm listening to it, it's reminding me of what I had already learned and what I already know, and how I can present this to him, because he's really bored with math, of course, right now too. But he intrinsically gets this stuff just like we all do.
Yes, it would be, it would be such a great goal to be able to set up some sort of curriculum to teach people these things. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do just on my own with no budget and things like that, with the video series and the books and the educational material that the content that I've created, is for people that have no bearing, no guidance through this sort of subject matters, to be able to go there and essentially for free learn this stuff. And trying to do it the best way I can. But it would be absolutely fantastic if there was some sort of budget or some sort of school that we could put together that would open people's eyes to the wonderful world of mathematics, and not separate the almost like you could say the left and right hemispheres of the brain. The qualitative and quantitative is not to separate those, and realize that there's this great quote from Steve Jobs. He says, the people that created the Macintosh computer did not see a distinct division between art and science. In other words, mathematics is really a liberal art if you look at it from a slightly different perspective. And what he's saying there is that, we've really separated math and looked at it in this very, like we started this conversation in a cold, clinical sort of way, when really it's this sort of lively language that you can really sort of understand is artistic. And that's why we see the artistry and the creativity of the creation through the creator using this language of mathematics.
Right. I had the experience of being able to use it to create visual art, and I'm not a visual artist, but yet I created these beautiful works because I had this backbone, or this knowledge of my own divinity, and I focused more on the process of it rather than what the product was going to be in the end. And I couldn't believe the things that I actually created, not being a visually oriented person. So it does have a lot of different applications for different people and who think in different ways or have different talents. It kind of works for everyone, including all ages.
Yeah, math is not just for the geeky people. It's for it's for the artists, it's for the esotericists, it's for the philosophers, it's for the, et cetera, et cetera. I so much so that, if you ask Plato, it's for the politicians, especially, to understand deeply the study of mathematics to help guide a civilization or a society the best way that they can, So yeah, mathematics is, I'm trying to anyway open the door for people, but it's been really hard even securing the subscribership that I've had over the years, just because people run very far away from mathematics when you even discuss it, and I did as well. Early in my studies, I kind of took a while to actually get to math, even though I consistently seen so many of everything that I was studying, whether it was archaeoastronomy, philosophy, history, lost civilizations, cross-cultural syncretic studies, that sort of thing. All of these things were pointing to math in one way, and I shied away from it, initially as well, just because I had a fear of it, and I think that that fear was ingrained into us by the school system, and that's the experience I've had talking to people.
Do you think that's by design or just,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely by design. To me, it makes the most sense that mathematics is this sort of universal language that helps you understand that the creation, the organization and ordering of creation, but not only that, the divinity of yourself. When you come to understand that, and especially how much it's been occulted, you realize why the quote unquote educational system has really taught math the way that they have, so much so that everyone shies away from it. And then we have, with Common Core right now, we have a further for them doing this even more, with Common Core, just making math so awful that no one even wants to touch it, and that's really sad.
And it's frightening too.
Absolutely frightening. Yeah.
I get this stuff home, for my son's homework, and I'm like, I don't understand what the hell it's talking about. Like, if I can't understand it, how is he going to understand it? Like, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
Yeah, and if you would teach math in a different way, that it would actually help people understand their world. Like the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is something that anyone can learn. They can, look at their human body and measure it. They can go out and measure it on flowers and plants and things like that. And that's something that's applicable. It's this mathematical formula, whatever, that we can go and we can see it happen in our world. And when I first got into like writing books and looking at all this stuff, I remember I asked my brother, he's much more mathematically minded than I am. He's like ace trigonometry and advanced calculus and algebra and things like that. And I asked him if he had ever even heard of the Fibonacci sequence, having gone through, collegiate level education in mathematics, and he had never even heard of it. And to me, that was just so asinine. That something so beautiful, something so harmonious, that's this golden ratio that you can go out and see all over your creation, that fundamental isn't even taught in a lot of these university level classes. And that's just insane to me, It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And to me, that is by design. They're not teaching that for a reason. If you taught that, people would start to get it. They would realize that mathematics isn't nearly as difficult as they've been taught, and they would start to make sense of their world.
Yeah, and the sort of knowledge base would be spread more evenly, or anybody could figure this stuff out on their own if just taught the very, very basics. And I think that's what a lot of the trivium, the folks who are into the trivium right now, that is I think their point as well, is that there's a place you should start and then progress from there. And what's happening now in the universities is they're starting places without having gone to, learn the very basics. Like your brother is learning trigonometry without ever learning the golden mean, which would seem to be like the first thing you would learn about.
Yes, the fundamentals aren't taught at all. Sure,
Right.
You might be taught add, subtract, multiply, and divide.
Right.
But other than that, it's like, you're not taught that, hey, numbers have a quality, numbers interact with each other in weird, unique ways. Certain numbers are more prevalent in creation than other numbers. Every single number has a certain geometry to it. That geometry is, has its own qualities and things like that, and is used throughout creation. We could talk about, the 5-pointed star or the hexagram and things like that. So you could teach that, and those are the fundamentals that people aren't being taught, and that's why they shy away from math. They kind of run for the hills when it comes to mathematics.
You were talking a little bit in your presentation about how the number 7 shows up a lot in basically in theology and different spiritual and religious traditions. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Lakota one, because you do include a lot of stuff about Lakota beliefs. Now, everybody knows about the 4 directions, or the 4 winds, which are considered sacred beings. But if you go deeper into that teaching, it also teaches about Mother Earth and Father Sky being the 5th and 6th, and then yourself being the 7th direction as well. It goes all the way to that in the Lakota tradition. So, like you said, it's everywhere.
Yes, and I mean as I explained in that video too, one of the reasons anyway that we see it in every tradition is because it's right on the human hands, with the fact that you have 28 phalanges of your hands. So 2 phalanges being these little segments or sections on your fingers, which are of course, they're right. I mean, these are the tools that you use to do mathematical functions, and then they're even separated mathematically for just in case you forgot. So you have 28 phalanges here, and adding 1 through 7, or 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 equals 28. So somebody that had, when you look at all these different cultures that may have had a focus, some sort of like theological or sacred, a reference to the number 7, and you see, well, where would they get that? Well, if they weren't conditioned to hate mathematics, you could see how just through simple arithmetic, you could find the sacredness of 7 and how it unfolds right on your hands. So that's, and then we also have this, alluding to what you were talking about too, the 6 directions of space, and then all of those directions, up, down, left, right, forward, reverse, resting on a center point being 7. So anyone that wanted to go out and try to understand their world through basic mathematical principles, looking at their hands, looking at how you navigate through 3-dimensional space, would figure out that the number 7 is key to that. And then you can even go further and look at 7, that, when we look at the 360 degrees of a circle, 7 is the only number that doesn't divide evenly into it in the base 10 system. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 all divide into 360 evenly. 7 does not. It gives you this repeating decimal. It's 51.428571, blah, 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 blah. And so right there, that tells you that there's something unique. There's something very special about the number 7. So there's multiple ways in which just common sense, simple arithmetic, common sense, and just looking at how you experience your reality, that points to the number 7. So there's nothing, you don't have to go, beg to the mathematicians at MIT or whatever to teach you this. All you have to do is just look and count. That's what's so beautiful about it to me. That's what's so, there's a elegance in the simplicity of it, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you consider yourself a theologian?
I mean, everything. I mean, all the studies that I do are like theologically based, and that wasn't my initial, when undergoing this like sort of like quest and trying to understand this stuff. That initially wasn't my arc or whatever. I ended up looking into theology, divinity, religion, spirituality, and things like that because I was starting to. Science wasn't giving me the answers that I was looking for, and I wanted to make sense of my world. So that ended up, pushing me out of the realms of just the analytical sort of left brain scientific mindset and going into all sorts of things like symbolism, esotericism, et cetera, et cetera. And what I ended up finding was all of this stuff ended up pointing to a creator, a creative force within creation. And there was some mystery around this. So, and ultimately the mystery comes down to, man's relationship with this thing. So ultimately everything I ended up doing was based around that, was based on spirituality and theology. And all of the videos that I've done have that in mind because that's just where it drew me to. So
you would, even though you didn't set out to be, you would consider yourself a theologian?
I mean, that's the crux of the work is looking at symbolism, looking at language, looking at mathematics, looking at the occultism or the occulted nature of our world, and seeing where God, where a great spirit, a grand architect, and Allah, whatever you want to say, where that thing sits within all of this. And so, I mean, everything I do is theologically based. So I guess I would be a theologian. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels weird to call yourself that, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really look at like terms and things like that. Like, I don't really consider myself a philosopher. I always just say I'm a teacher, because a lot of the things that I'm also doing videos on and writing on and teaching in, lectures and things like that are things that were taught to me or things that I had learned from other people, whether that's John Anthony West or John Michel or Helena Blavatsky or whoever it is. I'm teaching what they've learned, but I've also made a lot of discoveries along the way myself. And so I also teach those. So, I don't like to say philosopher, theologian, spiritual guide, mathematician, even linguist. None of that even, I don't really line myself with any of those sort of terms. To me, the best term is teacher, because that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching the things that I've come to learn in the best way that I can do it, as tersely, as simply, and, straight to the point as I possibly can.
That's interesting. 'Cause when I was sort of setting things up for this show, they asked on the like page, how do you classify yourself? And that was the first thing that came to me, was to just call myself a teacher. But for myself, I do want to be comfortable with calling myself a philosopher or a theologian. But I think that's more because doing so is sort of a rebellious act. For me.
Yeah, it's funny. Part of a lot of the things that I'm trying to do too is like re-empower people with this information, letting them take it on for their own and empowering them. And, one of the things I like to stress is that, and I kind of covered this in the last video that I did, that was that every single person is a philosopher. Every single person is a scientist. Every single person is a mathematician. Every single person is, a theologian in their own respect. That the idea that there's some sort of scientific board that you have to go to proselytize or whatever and get their okay in order for you to investigate your reality, I think is just horseshit. The idea that you have to go to a preacher in order to experience God is hooey. And so I think ultimately it comes down to personal empowerment and taking on these things for your own and learning them and learning them how they affect you. Go into theology, go into philosophy, go into mathematics, go into science and learn this stuff yourself. And don't ever, don't allow somebody to come along and say, oh, well, you don't know God because you're not a Latter-day Saint or whatever it is, or you can't know science because you're not an astrophysicist. that to me is just it reduces the human spirit. It reduces the human intellect. And I don't, if that's rebellious, so be it. I just, I don't want anything to do with it. I want personal empowerment. I want to take these things on myself. I want to come to my own conclusions. I want to do my own investigations, my own research, my own scientific, process, and come to the conclusions that I come to, and share those with people.
And that's the message that you send as well, is that you want that for other people as well. You want them to take what you're presenting and just have it light a fire, and then you go off and investigate this stuff yourself. Don't just, drink in what I say and say, oh, that's really awesome, you're awesome, but go out there and start checking it out for yourself.
And I think the researchers that are doing, in my opinion anyway, the researchers that are doing the best work and the most honest work are the people that are saying that. I just shared a thing from freethoughtproject.com that I'd seen some other people share too, and it was, don't believe the things I post, research the things I post. I think the researchers that are out there that are saying that, I think are the really important ones, because they're giving you a whole spectrum of knowledge and saying, do not trust me. Don't you dare trust me. Look at what I'm saying. Go and verify it for yourself. Because if we're not doing that, then we're honestly not doing science, and we're not being honest with each other. So, and I also make it this is it's a very poignant thing to point out with all researchers, that we're human beings and that we make mistakes. And so it's very important to go out to when we do a lecture or do a video or do a podcast like this, and somebody says something that might be incorrect, to point that out that that's incorrect, but also go and say that, hey, they're also a human being. They also make mistakes. And that doesn't, if they make a mistake here, there, that doesn't necessarily thwart the entire foundation of what they're presenting. These things are important, double checking what people are saying and giving them the power to do the research, and not try to sell you on like, hey, I'm right, I'm infallible, listen to what I'm saying because I've got all the answers. No, that's not what this is about at all.
Yeah. And part of how this system was designed was to make us lazy like that. So it's easy to fall into. It's a comfortable place to be, where somebody else is doing the discovering for you.
Well, that is the one thing that our educational curriculum, like I said, if you can even call it that, gave us, was a bunch of, it's like we were taught since essentially birth or whatever, that the world is figured out. That the scientists, the astronauts, the mathematicians, the philosophers, the theologians, the blah, 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 we got it all figured out. Here are the answers. You don't need to do any searching, and I think that whole paradigm is starting to be tore down very quickly, actually, because people are realizing that they've been lied to in literally every facet of their world. Their entire reality has been occulted, or their entire reality has been, distorted and perverted, and they've been handed, bags of shit. And they're saying that this is truth, this is how it is. And people are starting to say, no, I don't think so. I'm going to start making this investigation, myself into my reality. So we were given givens our whole life. We were given these quote unquote knowns, like we have everything figured out. And I think it's really important that we start tearing that apart, because as we're starting to see that literally everything from the politics, the economy, to our experiential world is being distorted. And I think people have had enough of it, really.
Yeah, it keeps us from having our own spiritual journey, and it keeps us from taking charge of our own health as well, because all of that is occulted as well. So you're talking about we're being presented a reality that everything has been figured out for us, and we're also being presented a reality that the narrative is that God happened 2,000 whatever years ago, so you don't even have to go through a spiritual journey, because that's already been done for you too. And if what we're telling you about God doesn't make any sense at all, just become an atheist. Don't don't investigate any further beyond what you're telling me God is bullshit. Just stop investigating. So that's the narrative. And that's one of my messages, is that, no, don't stop there. Your birthright is still to have a spiritual journey through life. Just because what the system has told you God is bullshit doesn't mean that there's nothing sacred. And then again, it's the same with the medical system. So they present us, this is how you stay healthy, which is all bull. All right, sorry, my voice meter stopped working. Weird. Okay, so where were we? I had ranted, and then
we were figuring out all the ills of the world.
Yeah.
You're summing it up right now.
Yes, and the system shut me down. See,
the system shut you down.
Yeah, so essentially we're getting the same narrative from all angles. Stop looking, stop looking. And when we keep looking, and then we keep discovering more. And so don't stop looking, even if you know you've been lied to. That should be the beginning of looking, not the end.
Yes, and all the things that you can learn from all the researchers, you could learn from my videos and books and things like that. It's like, ultimately, yeah, that's all fine and good. But true knowledge, knowledge to know comes from the word Gnostic, or, and Gnostic is a divine mystical insight, but it's experiential knowledge. It's knowledge through experience, and that is the most important thing. So, it's all good if you come to martyleeds33.com and you learn about how the word 7 encodes pi, or the number of phalanges of your hands and things like that, and that's all fine and good. But ultimately, it's how much you take in this knowledge and how much you experience the knowledge for yourself, because that's where true insight is going to be gained. It's not learned by watching YouTube videos. It's not learned by buying my books. It's not learned by listening to this show. It's you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. It's you undertake this journey yourself. You undertake this quest yourself, and you do the learning yourself. And there's a thing of sort of like you're not going to get to, I'm speaking highly metaphorically here, but you're not going to get to the gates of heaven by a ladder made by somebody else. Do you know what I mean? You have to craft that. You have to make the steps yourself. You have to undergo the process yourself. And so that's the most important lesson you can learn. And you're not going to learn that from going to your local Catholic church. You're going to learn that you have to give up your life for a man who lived supposedly 2,000 years ago, and so that's the conversation that I want to have. I want to sort of change that and put, like I said, personal empowerment.
Do you think that that people need to stay within their own tradition, or do you think people need to really look outside their tradition in order to expand their knowledge and experience? Do you think what one person could stick to their tradition and learn it all, their one tradition?
I don't know the etymology of the word tradition, but I'm assuming that the word tradition has a root in the word trade. And so when you talk about trade, you're talking about an exchange of information or goods between different cultures, right? So when you look at to me, when you look at one culture, really what you're looking at is an artistic expression of a fundamental base of knowledge that is, universal, and that speaks about, once again, at the core, the divinity of this experience, the sacredness of man. So I've learned the most by not sticking to one culture, is to have appreciation or reverence for all different cultures, all different religions, spiritual practices and things like that. That's where I've learned the most from. But then again, I can only say that because I was not reared into any sort of particular worldview by my parents or my surroundings. I was never raised Catholic, or, despite what people think on the internet, I'm not a Mason. My family's not Masonic, none of this. So I was sort of like freelance, I was independent, and I could go into these things and learn what I needed to learn to get where I am now or whatever. So I've learned the most by looking at as many different cultures as I can. But could somebody figure it out by just sticking to, like a Gnostic Christianity? Probably,
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I think so, because I spend a lot of time sort of wondering about that fine line of, appropriation versus appreciation. And just because I'm, really involved in the native world, and that's a big thing for natives is the appropriation. And what I've discovered so far is that in the Western tradition, there's this journey of having sort of gotten lost during the Enlightenment, where over reliance on logic and reason and all of these things that don't value creativity and beauty, where we kind of got lost in the West. And so you were saying earlier how we're all philosophers and we're all theologians, but we're all mystics too. And so one of the things that that kind of got lost in the West is the mystical tradition. And so many people in the West are operating under this false idea that we don't really have a mystical tradition, but we have a really, really rich and wonderful mystical tradition in the West, but it's just been covered over since the Enlightenment. So people have this natural sort of understanding within them about what mysticism is, but they're only finding it in other traditions because of this sort of occulted mystical tradition in the West. There's no really question there. I just started talking.
No, it's actually important to understand, because that's one thing that when, like I said, I was never raised under any sort of, religious institution or belief or anything like that. And so when I looked at Christianity or Catholicism or Islam or Judaism, it's like I had been taught the literalist version of these things. And, as I studied and investigated more and did more research, I realized that all of these traditions at their heart are mystical traditions. Christianity is mysticism ne plus ultra. The same thing with Judaism and the same thing with Islam. These are all mystical traditions. My family, my original name is McNally. Marty Leeds is a pseudonym, and McNally, it's Celtic. And when you look at the Celts, and I mean that's rich in mysticism. So I think that as we say mystical, or like you could almost say it like psychedelic sort of mindset with all of these different religions and traditions and things like that has been lost. But when I went and now I read the Holy Bible, that to me is just an insanely mystical book. That's all I can see it as, is just pure mysticism. And when we say mysticism, really what it is this sort of psychedelic, magical mindset of really realizing the world is sort of this creative art project in which you are smack in the middle of it, and that I would say, out of all the ways I've thought about this world, scientific, symbolic, whatever, the mystical mindset to me is the one that makes the most sense. It connects the most dots for me,
Yeah, and it's based in experience rather than in your head or in concepts that have been pushed onto you. So we've also lost our language to talk about it, but math gives us that language back because it's universal. So we lost our mystical tradition in the West, and then we can find it again with math, because that math is that universal language, and then we can begin to create a new language to talk about the experience of mysticism. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because, to me, there's a story of creation within the numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kind of thing. 0. And this is once again understanding that there is a creator, there is an intelligence, there is a language in which you can come to understand this creation. It's given to you to understand. This is highly mystical stuff. And it's, literally just the numbers of our number line. Like, in the beginning, there was nothing. zero, nothing. And then from that nothingness sprang a oneness. And this was all unifying. And that's the number one. And then that all unification split into a duality, a male and female, left and right, a positive and negative, of Shiva and Shakti. That's the number two. That, that two got split into the three, which is the past, present, and future, or the first geometric form in creation, being the triangle. That went to four, which gives us the four directions, that gives us north, east, west, and south, that gives us, the four seasons, et cetera, et cetera. This whole, all of that is a mystical understanding of mathematics that is so simple. It's right there for anybody to grab. And yet, if you went to go to try to learn that from anybody, like any university or a philosopher or a spiritual guide or whatever, where are you going to learn that? Yet it's right there. So this is that sort of mystical understanding of our reality through mathematics. Then when you take that even further and you say that there's mathematics to the very language that we're using, then it's like, wow, it just opens up a door like never before. At least it did for me. It sent me on several years of crazy intense searching, contemplative, studious searching, and just understanding my reality. And it's been the greatest thing that's really ever happened to me in some respects,
Talk a little bit more about that cipher and that journey a little more.
The cipher is something that I uncovered just one night, just randomly. It literally came out in about 2 minutes. I had been studying math and numerology and symbolism and the qualities of numbers, the principles behind numbers. Obviously focused a lot on pi because it was this really sort of, just big sort of question mark in mathematics. Like, why is this? What's up with this number? Why is it an infinite number? Why is it transcendental? Why is it when you go to draw a simple circle and then you draw a line through that circle and then you take the ratio between those two simple geometric forms, you get this ridiculously infinite transcendental? There's I was undergoing all of this really intense study, and then when it came to the mathematics, I just, I had seen so many other languages have a mathematical foundation without question. There's the abjad letters, there's the Greek cipher, there's the Hebrew cipher. All of this stuff is very prevalent. You can go and look up all of this stuff yourself. So ultimately it came down to saying, hey, well, is the language that I'm speaking, is there a cipher for that? And so since I was I was in the throes of a very, heavy, steeped in the study of esotericism and occultism and secret societies and theology, it just kind of, I don't know, it was a, what do you want to say, a moment of realization, a grand epiphany or whatever, and the thing just sort of came out. And so since uncovering that cipher, I spent a lot of time to try to figure out what this thing was. And that's led to looking into numerous subjects, everything from games and Bible verses and names and things in our current society that are being occulted. And this is, I've been doing this for, 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now. And there's just so much content to look at. And that's really what the channel is dedicated to. So,
what do you think is going on with the Mason thing? About if you mention anything that has to do with them, then suddenly you're like evil and you're plotting to destroy the world, kind of thing. What do you think that's all about?
Well, it's the same thing that happens with everything. It gets distorted, and its true original, noble nature is perverted because that's where information is kept. It's the same thing with Christianity. It's the same thing with Islam. It's you have this original movement that's encapsulating, occulting this body of knowledge that tells you about the sacredness of yourself. This goes for Masonry. This goes for Christianity. This goes for Islam. This goes for Judaism. And ultimately, because that knowledge base, because it's there and it's there to be preserved, that's what these institutions were originally there to do, is to preserve this information. When people in power, and I'll say malicious, sinister, malevolent people get in power, they know that, hey, I'm going to go to where the people are keeping the information that is passed on to further generations, and I'm going to go distort that. And that's exactly what we have with Christianity. Christianity doesn't tell you about the latent Christ within. It doesn't tell you about the God self within. It doesn't tell you about how when Jesus Christ says, I am, you're saying, I am that that illuminated self. What do they tell you now? They pervert it and they distort it and they say, hey, no, there's a guy that you have to pray to that died on a cross and resurrected 3 days later, and he's going to come and save you. So that original intention has been, like I said, perverted. Same thing with Masonry. Masonry is, has been so eloquently stated before, it's a codification of the essence of the Renaissance. And so really what you have there is Masonry being the custodians of this ancient body of knowledge that tells you about the divinity of yourself. And so, of course, what's going to happen with that? It's going to be distorted. It's going to be perverted. The cockroaches are going to get in and they're going to, they're going to infest the place. And that's exactly what I think that we have with Masonry. So much so that, there's a psychological aspect to this, and this is what you were talking about, how people see Masonry and it's immediately, it's like, oh, these are evil people. That's the whole impetus behind the organization was to just be this organization to take over the world and convince people it's a sphere and all this other shit. And it's just like, and it's the same thing and so when you flash a Freemason symbol, the gut instinct is that's what people will have. Well, it's the same thing that happened with the swastika. The swastika worldwide is a symbol of peace. Then we have this, whatever has actually happened in the history of the Nazis. That's a whole different conversation. But basically we have now, when you show a swastika people, they'll be like, oh, that's a representation of the Holocaust. That's a representation of dictatorships and pure evil and that sort of thing. When really the original intention of the swastika is a symbol of peace. So that's what I see, a perversion of all of these things. And the Masonry, Christianity, the symbols, the mathematics, the language, the perversion of all these things is to get you running from it, to not look into the positive aspects of these things. And so that's what I see happening with Masons. I think because I deal with Masonry, because I hit these things head on, it's really hard for people to even give me the time of day in many respects, because the things that I cover, the theology, the number symbolism, the cipher of the mathematics, the Masons being custodians of an ancient body of knowledge, all of these things don't tend to fit into the viewpoint and perspective of people that have theories on how the world works. Wait a second, Marty's stuff doesn't really align with the fact that I think reptilians run the world, so I need to just push this aside, And really, that's really sad to me, because this answers, and the people that have been paying attention, this answers a lot of fucking questions about a lot of different things. What's going on with the Bible? What's going on with our language? What's being perverted? How is this language being distorted to manipulate mankind on a mass scale? There's a lot of things that I think that these subjects that I cover actually answer, and it's kind of unfortunate that most people will shy away from it because of, oh, he's a Mason, I'm not. Oh, he's dealing with math, I don't like math. No, you probably do. You were just taught not to like it. That sort of thing. So, So as far as what's happening with Masonry, I can't even tell you what goes on in the halls of Masonry because I'm not a Mason. Never been there. I can tell you, and I can explain to you in detail, ad nauseum sometimes, all the things that I have learned from Masonry, all the very, very positive things I've learned from that being their symbolism, the rituals that I've learned from reading some Masonic scholars, whether that's, Albert Mackey or Albert Pike or, Manly P. Hall, et cetera, et cetera. There's a rich body of knowledge that they are concealing or not concealing, but being custodians of, I should say. And, I think it's important that people do not, just yell devil, or have, every time they see Masonic symbolism or that sort of thing. I think it's actually a really dangerous mindset to have.
Yeah, and I think it's also another one that's by design. So.
Actually, if I can here, this is something when people talk about Masonry, as in like I just got some quotes here about Masonry being the whole impetus or the essence of Masonry is to be this sort of like secret society that was built to literally conceal knowledge and run the world. This is from Adam Weishaupt, and he is the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, and this is 1776. And it says, this is a quote from him, and it says, "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment." And he's talking about the Illuminati. It says, "Let it never appear in any place in its own name, but always covered by another name and another occupation. None is fitter than the 3 lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it. So here's the founder of the Illuminati in 1776 saying that he is going to infiltrate Masonry and distort it. And so when people, they look at Masonry and they just, assume evil, it's like, well, you should really look at the history before you go and do that. And as far as like looking at me, and because I have a Masonic symbolism, or I'm Marty Leeds 33, assuming that I'm part of this organization, it's just honestly, it's just really bad research.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Yes.
Hey, before we come to the top of the hour, big shout out over to freedomslips.com over in the chat and those engaged there. Simply Red 777. And all the others. Let's see. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. There you go. Patrick English, especially engaging in the conversation. And Marty Leeds 33. You can do any search there. I posted several links. Reverb Nation, YouTube, Facebook, your website. Very engaging conversation. Y'all are putting a lot of information here together. I really appreciate it. I'm working on my next series in broadcasting, Rounding the Edge, and I have a lot of circles and squares and angles, and I started with putting, for what matters worldwide, I put 4 W's together at their bases around in a circle and have built from there. And it's an intentional, there is a lot of overlay to come into that, but it is kind of an intentional kind of reference to symbolism. And I've said that, Masons didn't originate geometry, so just because there's an alluding to it, I just kind of find it a little fascinating that all the shapes and how they just work in together, and the sacred geometry and the fingerprint of God, in my opinion. So before we run out, I'll hand y'all the mic, and everybody stick around. Whoops, there we go.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break, bathroom break. Come on back. All right, welcome back to the second hour of The Bridge with Kira. I'm your host, Kira Young. And tonight I'm having a great conversation with Marty Leeds, and as Vince is telling us, there's a lot of activity in the chat room. Again, I apologize for not being able to be in there myself, but I do my show live from my truck because I live in the woods and on the other side of the digital divide. So, thank you so much for helping me out with the chat room, Vince. And I have told him to let people know that if you want to call in, just to add me in Skype and just let me know, and I'll pull you in. So, are you back with us, Marty?
I am.
Okay, great. So before we left, gosh, we were talking about a bunch of stuff. We were talking a little bit about the whole idea of the Masons and people's assumptions when it comes to some of the traditions that you're drawing from, including Masonry, and what you've learned from it, and that you appreciate it, but there's this dangerous mindset out there, and it's really in the alternative sort of media or the alternative scene, or amongst people who enjoy alternative media, I guess. That's where we're finding this attitude that, oh no, Masonry is evil, and we need to not trust Marty because he's teaching us stuff that he's learned from them. So, full disclosure, I do come from a Masonic family, but not some sort of, high up Masonic family. My grandparents were Masons, and, in rural Louisiana, my grandfather was of mixed heritage, Scots-Irish and Choctaw, and in that time and place, you became a Mason, and guess what? You got a job, and you could make a living and things like that. So, just like if you marry a white woman, then your kids get to go to white schools. It's just the way it was. But I never learned anything about it when I was a kid, and I was surprised to find out that my grandparents were involved in that. I think my grandmother was part of I think they're called the Eastern Star, and then my grandfather, I don't know what degree he was or anything like that, but lots of normal people, I think, are part of it.
Yeah, and I think, people, because they see that they're being lied to and that the world is being twisted right in front of them, and, this stuff is getting exposed, people get pissed off. And then they're like, hey, I want to point my fingers at somebody or some organization or some bloodline or whatever. And so it becomes almost like really lazy to just be like, oh, it's all the Masons' fault. And you have to understand that it's like, and this is another thing that I talk about too, is that it isn't to say that there aren't completely evil Masons doing shit like this across the world. There probably are. But to just like, in one foul swoop, sort of just like declare all Masons and anyone that has anything to do with Mason as evil is ridiculous. My friend Ryan, he's a Mason. When I moved here, back here to Eugene, I met him online and became really good friends with him. And he's a great man. He's a really good dude. And, he's got nothing to do with, if there are these evil Masons that are at the top, he's got nothing to do with them. And his involvement in Masonry has got nothing to do with that. He was a Mason, or he is a Mason, his dad was a Mason, and he got involved in Masonry because he understood the esoteric aspects of it. So his involvement in Masonry has nothing to do with, if George Bush or whatever is a Mason. Just because that they are looking at the same body of knowledge has nothing to do with the fact that they're associated or they're working together or they're in cahoots. I think that mindset is very sort of like childish in a way, because it's just a way to really sort of just demonize an entire group of people without even knowing them, and that's really dangerous.
So at your presentations, do you get any type of sort of trolling that goes on there, or is it all people that are appreciating the kind of knowledge that you're bringing forth?
Well, it's weird because for years, I would get the occasional like, oh, you're this or you're Illuminati or what, blah, 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 blah. But I don't get too much of it because I think most people that are into that just kind of ignore what I'm doing. Like, I don't really get that much traffic. The last video I did is getting more traffic. And so there's people that are, coming out of the woodwork saying that I'm some plant or, whatever, part of the COINTELPRO or whatever. And so you get that, but I just kind of blow it off for the most part. And I also am like very open about my life and, who I am and things like that. I had one person come on say, they had posted this old article where I'd my real name is Kevin McNally and Marty Leeds is a pseudonym. And I've discussed this on like numerous shows. I've written about it in a book. I talked about it on the first podcast I ever did. I've written memes about it, and this guy comes on without any sort of research whatsoever and pulls up this old article where it says my name, Kevin McNally and not Marty Leeds. And you see this guy's a fraud. And it's like, well, if you would just listen to my first podcast, I talked about it. It's like that sort of, and there's nothing I can do about that. People are going to believe what they believe. And so I just have to go on and continue doing what I do, that sort of research, like claiming because I have a pseudonym that I'm some sort of like CIA plant or something. It's like, Mark Twain's name wasn't Mark Twain either. It was Samuel Longhorn Clemens. Does that mean he was part of the effing Illuminati? It's that sort of mindset that's just rather silly. That when I see that, I just have to just laugh and just kind of move along, and do what I do.
So let's go ahead and talk about your latest video, because it is getting a lot of attention, isn't it?
Yeah, and I honestly didn't know. I'm glad that it's getting so many hits and it's getting passed on and it's the most viral thing I've done. I'm glad, because I spent a lot of time on it. It was very heartfelt. I'm very proud of that. It was the first like full length movie I'd ever really done. So I'm proud of it. But it was, it was on the subject of flat Earth. And, I felt like I needed to do a video. I felt like, in part because of being sort of like a public figure or whatever, or doing, having people follow some of the things I do, and talking about heliocentric system, I thought it was important that I come out and, talk about this because I had tried to debunk the whole flat Earth thing and could not do it, and so I thought it was imperative of me and my responsibility to come out and say what I think about it. But it's also, and I'm glad it's gotten the response it has. I'm glad that it's so many people are seeing it, and I know it's positively affected a lot of people, so that warms my heart. But at the same time, it's like I just made this post on Facebook showing like, hey, here's a video that's 4 years old that explains the mathematics of the English alphabet. And, here's a video that shows that there's 2 lunar and a solar precessional calendar embedded in the game of chess. That's 3 years old, and that has 4,000 hits, And here's another video that has 10,000 hits and explains how the geometry and language and mythology and stuff like that surrounding Christmas points to the divinity of man. So I have like all these videos that have been out for years that have 4,000 hits, 8,000 hits, 10,000 hits. But no one's paying attention. And then I do one flat earth video, and in 3 weeks it gets 150,000 views. And that's great. I'm not complaining, I'm not playing the world's smallest violin here. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like the flat earth discussion is uber important. But I also think so much of the other stuff that I have to present is almost equally important, because, the crux of the post was to say, how many people are using the English language to speak to each other about the world in which they live and the sphere/flat earth argument, and yet they don't even understand the language that they're using, to engage in this discussion. And to me, that's important. Every time a flat earth person says, hey, the horizon always rises to your eye line. Did you know that the horizon equals 22 and has 7 letters, and 22 divided by 7 is pi? I think if more people knew that, they might get a better understanding of how, like we were talking about before, how magical and mystical their world is.
Yeah, I've been advised that if I wanted to get more hits on my YouTube videos, that I need to show my boobs more.
Just make a video called "Boobs and Flat Earth." You'll get like 1 million hits in a week. Monetize
Marty,
that shit.
you just picked the title of my next video.
Over the horizon. Hey Marty, on the serious side, I took a look a couple of times, or attempt to take a look at flat Earth on air for myself. I find this is one of the most criticized things that you can do is talk about the flat Earth. And I think for me, that first of all, there's nothing off bounds or out of bounds with me as far as what I might look at in information. But to me, when we see how much everything has been distorted and how we've been lied to on everything, if I came to find out that the Earth was flat, I would not be a bit surprised.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, when we were discussing earlier about like how you're the theologian, you're the scientist. No one can tell, you have to make this investigation yourself, being anyone that goes and looks at this, because you can't rely on somebody else to tell you what, and you have to go and say, well, I can't rely on what the scientists are telling me, and I can't rely on what some flat earther is telling me on YouTube. I have to go and investigate this myself and come to my own conclusions. And that's what I did with this. And for me, it was like I honestly, in some respects, I had a stake in the heliocentric model. It's like I really didn't have a dog in the fight at the end of the day, but since I had covered the heliocentric model and had written about it, I sort of had a stake in continuing that paradigm. But since I went and did a very, I think, very thorough investigation into all the fundamental, points of contention within these two models, I realized that I could not debunk it, and so I came to that conclusion myself. That was a scientific investigation that I made with myself to figure this out. And so, that was the impetus behind that film, was to say, hey, you have to undergo this investigation yourself. I'm gonna present 10 points of contention of why people are even investigating it, and then at the end of the film, I'm going to tell you the conclusion that I came to, and I'm going to be very open with it, and also say that I've been wrong in the past. So I think that's that was important to me to do that anyway.
Go ahead.
Let me interrupt real quick. I certainly look forward to. I shared the link for flat. Let me pop back to it. The Flat Earth, the ultimate litmus test. So I look forward to watching that. It's an hour and 13 minutes long. I've watched some other stuff. I can't call that guy's name offhand, and he never responded to my communication with him. But it is very interesting, so I'll look forward to that. There's a lot of things that do not add up for me as well. And there seems to be a lot of staged photographs or computer generated, and it's hard to find anything I would say that would lend credibility to living on a globe. So, I may sound like a nut, but I probably am. So there you go.
I still experience the world as very round, but that may just be that I'm living in this body.
Yeah, you're biased with boobs. Yeah, I know it causes me to go cross-eyed.
And you can't argue. You can't argue with them, can you?
That's my motto. You can't argue with boobies.
All right.
And honestly, when we were talking earlier about theology, I would say this, that like when it comes down to a subjective experience, like, how we view the world, like when I acting on an everyday basis, it really doesn't matter what the shape of the earth is. That is really holds no bearing whatsoever on like how we treat each other, how we, experience our world and things like that. We could be on the back of a crocodile. We could be on the back of a turtle floating in the ocean or something like that. It really wouldn't matter. The only reason that not the only reason, but one of the biggest reasons that it matters is that it seems to be that we're lied to about it. And that's why it's important. Whatever you take away from this experience, I think the one thing that I came to very quickly was that NASA, you can poke more holes in NASA than Swiss cheese. And it was something that I never really investigated too much. I always, I never really believed we were on Mars. I never believed we went to the moon. But I also did believe that there was a Hubble telescope up there. But then you start to really look at this stuff and, you can't really substantiate any of it. And so then it gets to the questions like, okay, well, why are they lying? What are they lying about? And so out of all the things that I've taken away from the whole flat earth research thing, I would say that the bullshit of NASA is so glaring, and it's important because billions of dollars are sent to that organization, the military organization. So, to me, it's important,
So do you think that's the end game is money? That it comes down to money?
No, the end game, this is something that I feel like is really important, and it's something that I'd come to long before I'd ever even heard of the flat earth movement. That the idea that the people that are in power are the people that are perpetuating the evils upon humanity, the idea that they are doing this for money. Well, fuck man, they can print money. They make up money. It's fiat. It's a fiat currency, which means, fiat lux in Latin means let there be light. Lux means light. So fiat literally means let there be. So when they say it's a fiat currency, it's saying let there be currency. So when people say, oh, they're doing this for money, they make money. Literally, they make it. So why would they be doing it for money? What they're doing this for is total control and to play God. And this is something that I absolutely, a position I came to, and I'm still there with the people that are in power in this world. They are enslaving humanity and they are trying to play God. And that means the God of the flesh, controlling this world. And, I think this is what they're doing. And this is why you have the people that are running this world, they're occultists. They know this body of information. They know the true nature of the system that we reside in. They know the occulted mathematics of our language. They know what the symbols mean. They know what the true nature of these religions and secret societies are. And they are doing everything in their power. And they know the history of this planet or this plane of existence, whatever you want to call it. And they are hiding it. They're distorting it. They're manipulating history. They're manipulating your reality. And they're doing it to play God over you. They're not doing it for money. They're not doing it for political gain. They're not doing it for any other reason than for total, absolute control. Now, why the flat earth thing actually becomes important is because what essentially the general idea that is being that people are coming to with the whole flat earth reality is that this is a closed system. That the idea that this is literally a closed system, that there isn't billions upon billions of galaxies out there and shit like that. No, that this is literally a dome with a flat plane.
We interrupt this program with the following announcement. The new word "fruck" has been coined today, and it means a frustrated thunk. And also, at this time, we have the 420 report from the Buzz Beaver reminding you that cannabis can. So I give you 1 minute to prepare for 420.
Okay, I'm in my truck in a state that's not very nice about stuff like that. But I'm sure if I showed the cop my boobs, everything would be all right.
Just don't show him your boobs and then say the earth is flat, because he's going to get super confused.
Yep. Okay, so, wow. Okay, my mind is a little blown here. Because I certainly couldn't prove that the world is round. But
and exhale. I can prove round and flat if I'm using boobs as litmus test.
the standard.
Yes. Okay, so I think boobs is okay, and cannabis is okay to say, but frunk is not a word that's been recognized by the dictionary here. So remember, FCC rules do apply.
Oh, right.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
I'm sorry too for not saying something. I'm just so used to F-bombs that I don't hear them. You know, even when they're coming out of my own mouth. So
I've worked in like sign shops my whole life, and so we tend to punctuate sentences with curse words. So
yes.
That's my bad.
Yep, no problem. So we'll be better about that. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Buzz Beaver.
And hold it. Exhale. Yes, do your part. Puff, puff, pass.
Okay, so where were we going with this conversation now that I'm
well,
distracted?
we covered flat Earth, New World Order, boobs, and cannabis. What else we got? What else? I think we covered it. I think we can shut this show down. I think we're good.
And don't forget the new word
Problem
frunk.
solved.
Yeah, don't forget the new word frunk that we came up with.
Exactly.
Yes, it's frustrating thinking or have thunk. So frunk.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, we are throwing pearls at you right now.
Yes. Now don't be swine. Be a Buzz Beaver instead.
Yeah, I'm in Arkansas, so you can't call in the hogs.
I'm sure you could. I am on the very edge of Virginia, right on the West Virginia border, and I could literally walk to West Virginia. I just have to cross the creek, and I'm over there. That's where I'm at. Where are you? You're in Oregon?
I am in Eugene, Oregon, yes. I've been living here for a couple of years and was in Wisconsin for a while. Grew up in native Wisconsinite, but lived out west for several years now. So, love Oregon.
I would like to go there. I would like to go there right now. It's probably a better place to live than where I'm at. Somehow I ended up close to D.C., I guess. It's where the work was. I've been called a federal agent because I'm a secretary I do emergency management at the federal level, so that suddenly makes me like, a secret agent that's bugging people's houses and, driving to Canada to do that. So I understand the stories that get out there when you try to share something as important as your work and as exciting. I mean, you lighting the fires under people's butts, getting them excited about learning.
I'm trying to because the reason I'm doing it is because it excites me. And, when we talked about what I consider myself, theologian, spiritual guy, none of that stuff. I consider myself a teacher. And one of the things I always learned about teaching is that when you teach something, it excites that you relearn it yourself and it excites that fire again. Like every time I can draw, a pentagram out and show how the ratio of phi is into pentagram or explain the cipher again and show somebody, something unique within it, that's always, it's like that spark again, it's always fun for me. So, I know that it's been the continual, spark or scintilla that's kept my flame going. And so if I can, take that candle and light another candle, well then, that's all good, right?
Absolutely. And for those who haven't really checked out any of your work, you have, on your YouTube channel, you have this little group of videos where it says start here. I of course didn't start there, but I started with the with the Toronto presentation, but then I went to there, and you go through some of this stuff kind of quickly because you know it. It's like part of you. So it's worth those who don't catch it, like if you don't catch it all the first time around, it's worth going through it again and checking it out again, because you do go through some of this stuff pretty quickly.
Yes, one of the biggest complaints I've had is that I speak too fast, but I also know that, I'm covering a lot of material, and I am just kind of like, I speak quick. That's just kind of by my nature or whatever, but I am covering a lot of material. So I want to get as much info as I can in those videos. And then I also leave them up there so people can like, hey, go back and revisit it and look at it again, and pause and take notes and stuff like that. So, but honestly, when I looked at, I don't really watch the stats too much on my YouTube channel or whatever, but when I look at like overall time watched, like most people, they might click on a video and it's like, oh, great, that video has 10,000 hits, but the actual watch time in the video is like 3 minutes, So it's like you realize that out of all the people that are coming to watch the videos, there's only a select, like truly a few handful of people that are actually spending the time to, sit through a 40-minute lecture on, a subject, There's a video I did it's just called Billiards. And I don't know how long it is, maybe a half hour or something like that. But it's one of my favorite videos that I've done. And it's, to me, when I did it, I was just absolutely blown away. I just could not believe that something was so mathematically sound, so precise, and has been hidden all these years within the game of billiards. And it just blew my mind. And then that video has had like 3,000 hits or something. Just because most people don't have the attention span or want to have the patience and take the time to sit through a lecture like that. So, that can be a little frustrating, but I also know that the people that have sat through them and have paid attention, it has affected them, So that's good.
Yeah, that's great. And I have the kind of patience to sit through things, because I just don't get enough intellectual stimulation or I don't get enough. So that's why I started this show, for the intellectual stimulation of talking to people like you, and the humor of talking to people like Vince.
I had to stand up for a chuckle.
And then people just help you out. I mean, they hear that I'm doing the show from my truck, and they're like, "Hey, I can help you do this or help you do that," and it's pretty cool. People I've never met before. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you can't really quantify or even know the amount of people that you've affected. And this is something that I have to kind of remind myself sometimes, or I am reminded by other people, because a lot of times you'll just go and you'll hang on the one comment that's like, oh, you're a effing retard, or whatever it is, and yet you don't hear from the people that you've deeply affected, because a lot of times those people just take the information and they don't comment on the page, or they don't like it, or whatever. So a lot of times I think you have to remind yourself that, hey, out of all the work that you do, you are reaching people, and if you can help change somebody's perspective into something more positive, help them find light in their own life, then that's ultimately a noble thing.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that all the time. Probably.
And the use of the word effing is perfect, and it brought a reminder to me that we're broadcasting right now, simulcasting over at reallibertymedia.com, and for those listening, I'd like to invite you over to join the chat there. You'll find some really stimulating people there. Also, shameless self-promotion, if you could help us out, our YouTube channel, reallibertymedia.com, need 38 more subscribers to get that custom URL. So, and also the effing part of it about is the social site, Freedom's Network, side-by-side partnered with reallibertymedia.com. So if for all y'all that could come along and help, if you think you can, or think you can, or thunk you can, that's past tense, of course, and that's some hillbillyese for you, and I appreciate it.
All right, and definitely, and Marty, your YouTube channel is Marty Leeds 33, and your website.
Yeah, MartyLeeds33.com, and then Marty Leeds 33 on YouTube, and then I canceled my Twitter account just because I wasn't really doing anything with it, and I don't really like the whole 140 characters thing. But and then Facebook, I post stuff pretty much every single day, just like little insights or memes or whatever, or updates and things I'm doing. So those are all ways you can get me.
Okay, good. Yeah, and definitely subscribe to your channel and mine too. I don't even think I have that many, maybe 400 subscribers to my channel. So subscribe, okay? There'll be lots of boobs, I swear to God.
And liking is loving, and sharing is caring.
All right. And so, what do you have coming up? Any activities coming up in the future?
Well, okay, so what's happening? Okay, so I released 2 records. I went on tour in Canada last year in August, and then so that lecture is up. That's the one you had seen, the one in Canada in Toronto. So I did that, and then I released a record in September, and then I released another one in January. So those are up on iTunes that you can get. I think you can get them on Amazon as well. And so I did that, and then I also made 2 videos in the last couple months. The one is the Flat Earth, the Ultimate Litmus Test, and then I made one called Curiosity Roving Through the Claims of NASA, and those are both on my YouTube site. You can see. And then what do I got coming up? So I'm finishing a book this year, hopefully mid-year or late this year, something like that. And then I'm also looking at recording another record. And that's all written and everything like that. It's just a matter of recording it, and that'll be on iTunes as well. And then the only speaking engagements I have coming up are I'm doing a thing called Lightning in a Bottle, and that's in Bradley, California, May 25th through the 30th. And I'm not sure what date I'm speaking, but I'm going to be doing a speech called, what did I call it? The True United Nations, I believe is what it's called. And that's talking about a reunification of the peoples under natural law, essentially. So, that's what I got coming up on the roster anyway.
Oh, that sounds great. I would, if I was out in California, I would definitely go. And check out your music. It's actually on your same channel as your math stuff. You have your songs up there, really beautiful songs. And
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. When you do your presentations, do you also sing as well?
No, I do not. No. And I really haven't been asked to do that many, conferences or anything like that. I think a lot of times I get looked over with, I don't get invited to Conspiracy Con. I'm not invited to the next Free Your Mind conference and things like that. So I think a lot of times this stuff just kind of gets looked over or brushed off. So, but I'm doing, like I said, I'm doing one this year, so we'll see.
I was wanting to do a, presentation on the unholy masculine, but I didn't get invited to Free Your Mind either, No, I was not. I would not do a presentation on that. I'm taking the piss out of Mark Passio. That's what I'm doing right now. But no, they don't invite me to those things either. And I went to high school in that area, and I could bring a lot of people. But, maybe they don't like big boob presentations. I get looked over too, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I like at this point I just kind of take it with a grain of salt or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I just keep doing what I'm doing, and if you're not interested in presenting it or even giving it a shot or whatever, that's fine. That's got nothing to do with me. I'm still going to march ahead. So
yeah, it's nobody's business what people think of you. None at all.
Well, it's like you get with the internet, it's so great that you get to reach people, but then you also get the a lot of the hatred and stuff like that. And you realize that if the internet wasn't around and I was coming to these conclusions and things like that, how many people would I even get to talk to about it, let alone get this barrage of hatred, So it's like when I do see that, it's like I really have to be conscious of it and just blow it off, because in any other time period, this wouldn't happen. You know what I mean? You couldn't get thousands of people to randomly hate you, you know what I mean, on the internet, because you just wouldn't have access to getting to those people. So I realized that that's part of living in the society that we live in, that if you're going to put yourself out there, talk about controversial things, try to shake up the paradigm because you feel like it needs shaking up, well, you're going to get people that are pissed off at you. You're going to get people that are not going to invite you to conferences and because they think that you have some sort of agenda or that you're a Mason or whatever it is, and so that's just is what it is. And I'm fine with that. So,
yeah, I guess some days I'm fine with that. And some days I'm really not. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the thing. Yes. And this, I never started this for notoriety. I never started this to make a buck. I never started this to cause cause a ruckus or whatever. I started this because I felt like it was important. I felt like the information that I was sharing was important. It helped me change my mindset. It helped me give a clear view of who I am and what I'm doing here, what this plane of existence or this earth is. It was important to me. So that's what I wanted to do. So anything that has come out of this, whether that's, getting a chance to talk to you, going to California and speak, it's icing on the cake. To me, the work in and of itself, going through that and sharing it with people is what it's all about. Period. End of story. That's it. So I appreciate the chances I do get. And if people don't want to give me that opportunity because they have a bias towards it, like I said, that's got nothing to do with me,
Right. And it is important. That's why I invited you on, because I think it is important. And the passion that you have for it is very palpable. So just give Marty Leeds a little minute of your time and you will discover that it is important. No matter what you think of Flat Earth, that's not really your work. You were just making a point, I think, with that video.
No, we kind of alluded this to earlier, but yeah, it's a good point. It's like, I did a Flat Earth video because I thought it was important to do it. And I'm probably going to do another one talking about the cipher and, some of the things with Flat Earth. But I'm not necessarily a flat earth researcher. I'm not necessarily the guy that you should come to and talk about this. There's people that have written books on it. There's people that are doing videos full time on it. There's people that have spent a lot more time investigating than I have. And I would direct you to those people. I do have some things to say about it. And I would also say this, that there are a lot of the people in the sort of flat earth community that are coming to the conclusion that it's all Masons. You can't trust the Masons and things like that. Well, if you do come across that information, you might want to go over to MartyLeeds33.com or, my YouTube channel or whatever and get a different perspective on that. And that's all I ask. I'm not trying to promote any particular ideology or worldview or religious institution or secret society, anything like that. I am trying to give you a better perspective on your own sacredness and having a little bit more temperance and tolerance when it comes to looking at all of these sometimes very controversial subjects.
What do you think that your biggest impediment is now to continuing your work? What's getting in the way?
Time.
Yeah.
It's because when I first started doing this, I took like a year and a half off full-time work, where I was just working part-time. I was kind of working out of my house, that sort of thing. And so I had a lot more time to do the intense research and put together the videos and things like that. And I for a long time, and I still do have a hope that I'd be able to do this full time, where I could, just spend all my time doing research and presenting, making content, producing things, videos, books, lectures, that sort of thing. But the monetary side hasn't been there at all, which is fine. That's not what, like I said, that's not what this is about. So right now, the biggest thing is like the last video I made. I mean, it was a full length movie, so it took a long time, but it took months upon months, and not because it actually took months. It's because I work a full-time job. I also like to hike and bike, and I'm a songwriter and, that sort of thing. So there's a lot on my plate. So the time factor is actually what prevents me from getting more work out. And that's just like, it's unfortunate because I feel like it's probably the most important. It is, as far as like intellectually and spiritually, the most important thing in my life. in that respect. So it's unfortunate I can't spend more time on it, but that's just the way of the world, you know?
Yeah, again, we're back to that design, right? It's not designed to support somebody who's doing the type of work that you're doing, and B, like we have this sort of covered up form of slavery going on where we have to get these jobs, you know, instead of there's no, like, for me, I often joke that there's no ads in the paper, you know, help wanted philosopher poet with big boobs, you know. So I just pretend to be a secretary, and
yeah, and I think in another, you know, if we could reimagine society where those things are honored, you know, not the boob thing, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I mean, being a philosopher, being a poet, being a teacher, that sort of thing. Like, I know that, I mean, the universities, as far as like your standard university, is not going to accept the work that I do because it crosses things. You know, it's like, okay, why are you merging spirituality and religions with math? What do those have to do with, you know, each other? You know, so I think that there's a big rejection as far as that's concerned in the university system because it is very regimented. It's very rigid. You know, it's a very sort of left brain institution. So it's very unfortunate. But I'm also in a position that I always have food on my plate. You know, I live a good life. So if this just ends up being a labor of love, well, that's how it started. And if that's how it ends, that's how it ends, you know? That's
a good way to approach it, I would think. You know, and I've had the same experience. And I was able to get a really great master's degree, and I got to study with people of all different spiritual and religious traditions, and we got to cross the lines, you know, and study cosmology, and we got to study science and how science is really coming to the conclusions that the sages of old have come to a long time ago. And then I got out in the world and they said, yeah, big deal. So there's still no support, and you just kind of have to make your own way and find your own way and find a way to give your gift, and not be swayed by how it's valued or devalued, because it's you're teaching a sick culture. So the signs of health might not be what you consider signs of health, or what you might have been taught the signs of health are. I did want to get in one thing about science, because that's an important thing, that when science and religion kind of split off, whenever that happened, because we have this thing going on with science now, how this narrative in our culture that you can't do science unless you're one of these important scientist-y peoples. And so we have these science celebrities out there that tell us what to think about vaccines. They tell us what to think about the medical establishment, and they tell us what to think about cosmology, and they tell us what to think about the shape of the earth. All of these things. So and they're almost like a priest of today. They're the priests of today, these science celebrities, and we have to bow to them because we're not smart enough as regular people to really understand the things that they've spent so much time learning. So we're going to need to bow to them. So I see your work flying in the face of that narrative as well.
Yes, I mean, it is really like the religion and the priest class of scientism now. You know, like Richard Dawkins or Neil deGrasse Tyson. These guys have millions of Twitter followers, like almost like they're the Pope or something. You know, and I see a guy like Richard Dawkins causing more division than anything. You know, and insanely self-righteous insanely egotistical, really demeaning towards anybody who doesn't really sort of believe his worldview that, hey, evolution is a fact, that sort of thing. And that's really not science at all. That's not, the science isn't a set of belief systems. It's a process of learning. It's a study. It's a method of investigation. And so these people that are out, claiming that they're doing the scientific method, like, for instance, when Neil deGrasse Tyson gets on, a late night television show and shows the proof of gravity by dropping a microphone, that just shows, whether gravity exists or not. That's not proof, and that's certainly not the scientific method to go and prove it. So this is. Once again, I think mankind is coming to this position where it's like, no, I'm not going to go and trust those people anymore, and I'm not, that goes to the theologians as much as the scientists, I'm going to take on this investigation myself. And that to me is the only way to really come to the truth, is to find it yourself.
So that's what I would encourage. And for all of my joking, about mammary glands, I joke about it because, of the package that I came in, it really is hard for people to think of me as a philosopher or a theologian. And it's simply because of the package and the narrative that we're operating under. So I'll continue to push that in people's faces. Just because of that alone. And keep doing what I'm doing as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, every little bit helps, and any of these boundaries that we can break down that prevent us from expressing who we are, and allowing ourselves to come to full fruition intellectually and spiritually and things like that. Anything that's keeping us from doing that, we need to break down. And I think that we live in a unique time that that's actually happening. One of the reasons it can break down is because of the widespread dissemination of information. I mean, if I lived 40 years ago, you would never hear of me. Why? Because there's publishers today aren't knocking on my door saying, "Hey, can we release your book?" I'm independently published, and if this was 40 years ago, chances are no one would publish my book. Or my books or any of the material that I presented. Thank God for the internet, because, 40 years ago, I would have to go door to door and express this stuff to people and teach this stuff to people. Now it's like I can make a video and put it out there and people can see it. So we live in a unique time where we have this opportunity to literally go and learn as much as we can about our reality until this thing called the internet eventually gets shut down. So I'm going to utilize it the best I can.
400 years ago, you would have been burned at the stake.
Exactly.
I would have too.
Hey.
Yeah. A woman dealing in philosophy? How dare you?
Right. Must be a witch.
Witch. Exactly.
Which reminds me, Marty, it is really fantastic to meet you here on the radio. And thanks to Kira for having brought you here, and I find you with a lot of great information. So I'll look forward to sitting in the classroom with you. I would also love to put you together with a couple of folks. A little later on, I'll link you guys up there and put you guys together in connection. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to get out of here in just a minute. Like to remind you, and thank y'all for joining in. And the word of the day was frunk. It was brought to you. Today's broadcast has been brought to you by the word frunk and Free Thinkers Non-Anonymous. And it only works if you keep coming back.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks.
Not really. Since we talked about boobs so much, I was a bartender for a long time, and this one old guy came up to me and said, I'll never forget this. He said, "Drinks are like boobs. 1 is not enough, and 3 is too many." So there's my words of wisdom for today.
Why, thank you. That's
yeah.
But what about 4? I mean, would that be okay?
See, now, yeah, then that's new territory.
Proper multiples, and the only exception for 3 would, of course, be On Mars with that one movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, Total Recall. That's what you're. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yes,
like, what do you say?
that's it,
Total
yeah.
Recall. There you go. Okay.
There you go. So, my apologies if the conversation centered too much around boobs. That's my own fault.
Well, boobs
Yeah.
are for guys like squirrels are for dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't help yourself.
And you can't argue with them. You just can't. You just can't.
Why would you try?
Oh, I'm sorry if we're embarrassing you, Marty.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay,
It's
cool.
It's good when you talk about such sometimes really heady or intense stuff to have a laugh or two. You know.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You need to mix in the laughs there with
Exactly.
everything else. And I really appreciate your time because, like you said, your biggest impediment right now is time. So I know how important your time is, and I'm really glad that you took the time to come on and talk to me and get silly and serious all at the same time.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. I don't get asked to do a lot of these things, and I don't really seek it out that much anymore because I'm trying to kind of step back from that whole thing. I think there's a lot of researchers out there that spend all their time just doing podcasts and almost, from my perspective anyway, talking too much. So I'm trying to avoid doing some of that. Because like I said, this really isn't about like a personal notoriety or celebrity or anything like that. It's just helping people understand this information as best as I can understand it. So I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And we will be back next week. Right, everybody. Thanks so much, and we will catch you next time.